Hey everyone, welcome back to TV Buzz Zone. Today we're looking at Legacies, the spin-off that had everything going for it, but still fell short. Why didn't it reach the success of The Vampire Diaries and the originals? Let's find out. When The Vampire Diaries premiered in 2009, no one expected it to become the flagship series for one of CW's most successful supernatural franchises. The blend of horror, romance, and strong character-driven stories quickly won over audiences. From that success came the originals, which carved out its own identity with darker themes, complex family dynamics, and higher emotional stakes. So when Legacies launched in 2018, it had every advantage. It was born from a proven franchise, centered on known characters like Hope Mikaelson, and had a built-in audience hungry for more stories from Mystic Falls and New Orleans. And yet, the show never truly landed. It struggled with ratings, failed to capture critics, and left many longtime fans disappointed. The question is, why? Why did Legacies, a show set up for success, fail to match the impact of its predecessors? Let's break it down. Departure from established lore. One of the most glaring issues with Legacies was how it handled the lore of the TVD universe. The Vampire Diaries and the originals both developed intricate mythologies like the origins of vampires, doppelgangers, the Gemini Coven, the Mikaelson's family curse, among others. These weren't just world-building details, they were crucial to the character arcs and long-term storytelling. Legacies, however, seemed to throw that consistency out the window. The introduction of Malivore, an amorphous mud creature who consumed monsters and erased them from history, felt disconnected from the vampire witch werewolf foundation of the universe. Why introduce dragons, gargoyles, and genies when previous shows already had a rich supernatural ecosystem to pull from? It didn't help that Legacies rewrote rules without proper explanation. How does Landon, who appeared to be human, suddenly become a phoenix? How does the school's magical protection work compared to the older boundaries of Mystic Falls? The lore was so muddled. It undermined continuity and alienated longtime fans who cherished the consistency of the previous shows. Monster of the Week format. One of Legacy's most noticeable structural shifts was its reliance on a Monster of the Week format. In theory, this approach was meant to give the show a distinct identity, a supernatural procedural that leaned more into fun and whimsy. For a short while, it worked. Season 1 gave us unicorns, dragons, zombies, and even a minotaur. But very quickly, the novelty wore off. Why is that? Because these monsters rarely mattered. They didn't have long-term impact or meaningful stakes. They were often defeated by the end of the episode, and their presence rarely contributed to character growth or overarching storylines. Compared to TVD, where each supernatural threat tied into personal struggles, or the originals where enemies often came from centuries-old vendettas, Legacies felt like a Saturday morning cartoon by comparison. By season 3, even fans who initially defended the format admitted it had become predictable and unengaging. The show leaned more on spectacle than substance, and the repeated use of obscure creatures created tonal whiplash that clashed with the grounded emotional storytelling fans were used to. Hope Mikaelson's wasted potential. Let's talk about Hope, the daughter of Klaus Mikaelson and Hayley Marshall. Arguably one of the most hyped characters in the entire TVD universe, she was destined to become the most powerful supernatural being ever created. Legacies delayed her full transformation for far too long. Despite her heritage, the show seemed hesitant to let her truly embrace her powers. It wasn't until season 4 that Hope finally became the Tribrid and turned off her humanity. This storyline should have been a game changer, but unfortunately, it arrived so late that it felt more like a desperate Hail Mary than a natural evolution. Hope's arc should have mirrored that of her father's, who struggled with control, legacy, and redemption. Instead, she spent most of the series either playing mom to her classmates or running after Landon. That's not an exaggeration. Entire seasons revolved around Hope trying to protect or resurrect him. Her identity became so intertwined with this one relationship that her own growth as a character was stifled. This was a massive missed opportunity. Fans waited years to see Hope become something greater, but instead got a character stuck in emotional limbo, robbed of any edge or purpose. The Hope and Landon problem. Let's be honest, Landon was never a compelling protagonist. His introduction was fine, but as the series progressed, his central role in the story became a drag. Landon had little personality beyond being the guy Hope loves. His supernatural status, eventually revealed to be a phoenix, came with little to no payoff. He died, came back, disappeared into Malivore, came back again, died some more before coming back again, but he always remained the same wide-eyed, passive character. The relationship between Hope and Landon lacked the intensity that TVD fans were used to. Compare it to Elena's relationships with Stefan and Damon, which were filled with moral dilemmas, heartbreak, betrayal, and growth. Hope and Landon's romance, by contrast, felt one-dimensional and repetitive. Every time the plot tried to move forward, it circled back to Landon being in danger or needing to be saved. It became exhausting. Worse still, their romance overshadowed other far more interesting dynamics. Fans noticed real chemistry between Hope and Josie, or even Hope and MG, but those threads were never properly explored. In fact, the show squandered the chance to develop a groundbreaking same-sex relationship between Hope and Josie, instead opting for tired love triangles that led nowhere. A tonal identity crisis. One of the biggest reasons Legacies struggled to find its footing is that it never quite knew what kind of show it wanted to be. Was it a high school comedy, a fantasy adventure, a dark supernatural drama? At times it tried to be all three, and as a result, it succeeded at none. The Vampire Diaries built its tone on tragedy and tension. The originals leaned into moral ambiguity and gothic horror, but Legacies opened with quirky humor, campy monsters, and musical episodes. While this lighter tone may have appealed to a younger audience, it drove away core fans who wanted more emotional weight. It's hard to feel suspense when the show cuts from an emotional death scene to a slapstick moment with talking gremlins. And even when Legacies tried to embrace darker storylines, like Hope's No Humanity arc, the shift felt sudden and inconsistent. The tonal confusion made it difficult for audiences to know what to expect from week to week. Underused ensemble cast. Set in the Salvatore School for the Young and Gifted, Legacies introduced a wide range of characters, many of whom had genuine potential. Josie and Lizzie Saltzman, the twins from the Gemini Coven. MG, a kind-hearted vampire with self-control issues. Kaleb, Jed, Cleo, Finch, and many others. These were characters that could have anchored their own arcs, but time and time again, the show sidelined them. Some vanished for episodes without explanation. Others had their storylines rushed or abandoned altogether. The Gemini Coven's merge storyline, one of TVD's most intense plotlines, was barely explored, even though Josie and Lizzie were central to it. Characters like Jed only started to shine near the end of the series. Cleo was introduced late, but quickly became a fan favorite, though she never got the full development she deserved. Meanwhile, supporting characters from TVD and the originals like Caroline Forbes were teased, but never fully integrated. Weak villains and stakes. In both the Vampire Diaries and the originals, the villains were charismatic, terrifying, and at times misunderstood. Klaus, Catherine, Elijah, Damon, Kai, Marcel, Michael, Davina, you name it. These were threats that changed the trajectory of the show. In Legacies, the main villain was a mudman. Malivore was vague, faceless, and ultimately disappointing. The show tried to make him a long-term big bad, but he never resonated with fans. His motivations were unclear, his powers were inconsistent, and his presence dragged down the narrative rather than elevating it. Even when Legacies pivoted to new villains, they were introduced too late or given too little depth to be memorable. Since the show rarely allowed major consequences, characters didn't die or stay dead. There was no fear or risk. Without stakes, even the most dramatic moments lost their impact. A franchise that forgot what made it great. At its core, the Vampire Diaries universe thrived because it balanced supernatural spectacle with real emotional resonance. Deaths hurt, romances burned, characters grew and changed. Fans didn't just watch TVD or the originals, they felt them. Legacies tried to build on that foundation, but forgot to bring the soul. Instead, it delivered a messy mix of tone shifts, shallow romances, undeveloped characters, and inconsistent lore. Ironically, for a show called Legacies, it struggled most with honoring the legacy it came from. It had the potential to be a worthy continuation, to evolve, modernize, and carry the torch for a new generation. But in trying to do too much, it forgot what mattered most. It wasn't just about monsters or magic. It was about the characters, their pain, their choices, and their redemption. That's why Legacies failed to become the next great chapter in the Vampire Diaries universe. That's it for now, but we want to hear from you. What other factors do you think held Legacies back from reaching the heights of the Vampire Diaries or the originals? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more awesome updates. Want more? Check out our videos on the Vampire Diaries, the originals, and the Twilight casts. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye!